Hey, Aaron. Hey, Tiffany. Welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hey, how
Hey,
are
how y'all
you?
doing?
We are good. We're so glad that you guys are here to share an incredible journey to debt freedom that we know everybody cannot wait to hear all about, because many people are tuned into the show right now who are trying to get their gears in motion on the journey to debt freedom too. So we're super excited to have you guys on today. But before we get into your story, can you just take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody that's listening and let them know what you're all about?
Well, I am Tiffany, and this is my wonderful husband, Aaron. We've been married for 8 years now. We met while we were overseas in the military in Italy. Um, we now live in beautiful Florida, and we are five of us. Us, two kids, a dog, and actually a bird now. So we've expanded, we've grown, and we've been working on this process, this journey since we've met, actually, managing finances.
So what branch of the military were y'all in?
I was Army.
Air Force.
All right. So one of you got it right. All right. Awesome. Awesome. I'm just messing around. We really appreciate both of you guys serving and doing what you do to protect our country. That's totally, totally awesome. So tell everybody about how much debt you had and what type of debt it was and the time it took you for your journey.
We had roughly about 35,000 in debt between mainly, they say good debt, stuff like the mortgage. So we had the mortgage going, we had two cars, and we had done a lot of renovation on the home. We had actually wanted to sell a while ago, but the property values with the economy, it had just kind of fell into a slump, and we couldn't get out of it without doing a short sale. So we decided to just invest in the home to increase the value, and a lot of the debt came from that as well. Because I don't like to finance anything I don't have to. So what we actually did was we put a lot of the renovations on the credit card, and that compromised the bulk of the debt between all of that and the cars and the mortgage.
Right. So without the mortgage, it was 33,000 in consumer debt. The mortgage itself was 150,
Yeah.
150,000.
So did you all tackle both, or are you all doing the mortgage now?
We kind of killed everything all at once. Uh, the way it worked out is we came up with a budget to actually work our way out of debt, and we kind of estimated that to be over like a 2-year period. But the more we talked about it, we had kind of started exploring other ideas. What if we did something radical to kind of fast track that? And that's when selling the house came up. And we'd kind of joked about it, but after we talked about it the very next day, she met a realtor and talked about it, and it started to become more of a reality. And before we knew it, she was at our home, and she was like, whatever you need to pay off your debt, your value is in your home. It's there.
Right.
And we can get you the money you need from the sale of the home to cancel out everything.
Right.
Oh. Now, what made you all even start to have this talk? Because you had the cars, you had stuff that's typical. You didn't have any type of debt that was not out of the norm. People have cars, people have car notes, and people have financed their renovations to make their house look nice. That's all typical. That's normal. No big deal. But for you all, it became a big deal. Why? What made you all start thinking like, nah, this isn't it. This isn't what we're supposed to be doing. We should get out of debt. How did that conversation even start?
Right. Well, I was listening to Dave Ramsey, and somehow I found His and Her Money. And I was listening to a lot of the interviews, the podcasts, and your own experience. And I came across a sermon. And that's what really drove it home for me, because I've been hearing the same thing over and over. But there was a particular sermon that I heard about being debt free and looking at it from a biblical perspective. And so by us being believers, we saw it as almost like an insult to our faith to trust the economic system, this worldly system of handling our finances so loosely. We saw it almost like an insult and a level of distrust almost. And we had to sit down and just have real conversations with ourselves about, are we managing our resources properly? Will God trust us with more if we don't properly use what He's already blessed us with? So for us, it was more of a spiritual standpoint, and we started looking long term. We were looking generational, and we just weren't happy with it. We knew that between our level of experience and education that we could do a better job and be more intentional about spending our money and actually creating a budget and sticking to it. We knew that we could do that. It was just a matter of convenience and basically laziness. We just weren't doing it, and we were starting to see a trend. So that started the conversation. We were talking about it more and more, and finally we just had to sit at the kitchen table one night and have that ugly conversation and just lay it bare and see where is the money going, what's coming in, where is it going, what happened to it. And in that conversation, that was our probably first real budget meeting. We realized that this is broken, this is wrong, and we have enough. We have more than enough. We just need to better plan with our money. So, and that's what started everything. I think it was admitting it, saying it, and not only saying it, but putting a plan in place, because God wants to bless your plans. Put a plan in place and stick to it. And that's what we started doing. Instead of just having our money come in every month or every week and just taking care of the bills, we started saying, okay, we know what we need to do to give. We know what we need to do to save. We know what we need to do to spend. We know how we need to pay ourselves. Let's just be intentional about how we handle this resource. And one thing kind of led to another, but it started with that conversation, because in our years of being married, we had many conversations about money, but we didn't have a conversation about budgeting our money. So there's a difference. We talk about how much is left in the account, moving some back from the savings. Oh, we got to pay this. I didn't expect this bill to be so much.
Yeah.
But we never sat down and said, hey, this is it. This is all we got. And if it's gone, it's gone. But we're not dipping. We're not transferring. We're going to take care of this and be responsible and adult, basically, about our finances. If it's not enough, it's not enough. Don't go looking for it. Just leave it alone.
So, Aaron, take us to that conversation, that initial tough conversation where Tiffany brought this to you. Hey, I heard this guy, Dave Ramsey. Hey, I saw this sermon. I think we need to change things. What we're doing isn't working with our finances. What was your response?
To me, it's, I'd kind of, been on the same track of thinking, because, every time something goes sideways with finance, now you have to try to find the balance. And, I kind of feel like personally my patience had kind of grown short with the check-to-check lifestyle, or, you seem like you get ahead, then something happened and there's not enough resources to deal with it. So whatever progress you made on the savings, you have to retract that and redirect. And kind of like what she was talking about, I felt on a biblical standpoint, we were out of line, to, not borrow, but be the lender. The standard that we should keep for ourselves. How do we put ourselves in that position? And you can't put yourself in that position when you're beholden to everyone else, creditors, cars, mortgage, so on and so forth. So in just, if you're really being honest with yourself, if you're financing it, you really didn't have the funds for it anyway. And, when you have to rely on other people's money, then you have to be more reliant on things like a credit score and all this other stuff. And I just wasn't feeling it no more, to kind of simplify it. So we had that conversation, and we had to have that honest talk about how do we rectify this. And that's when that first budget rollout came. But very soon after, things that we thought were kind of maybe a little too aggressive started to become a lot more realistic and preferred. Right. And that's the route we went down.
Awesome. Now, it's one thing to have that talk and you guys fight through it and you say, you know what, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. Now, there's a gap between that conversation and the work that you put in, because before you can get to the work, you got to change your thought process. You got to think differently. So talk to us about the shift that you had to make within yourself from a mental standpoint in order to even get in position to do the work that was going to be necessary to get out of debt.
Well, we had to really make the agreement first with each other that we're committed to this. And, it can't work if only one person is marching in that direction. You got to be going there together. If you're going about this and you're both trying to apply different strategies to accomplish the same goal, then you're really, spinning in place. You're not going to go anywhere. So for us, when we decided that we were going to go down the route of sell the house and pay down debt with profit, what that really meant was kind of taking that big leap, because we'd never done that before. We never sold or bought a home together before. You know, when I came out of the military, I left from Louisiana and I drove down here to Florida. She had already purchased the home we were living in. So this was also going to be a big first for us. So in doing it with the kids on top of that, you know, we kind of expected it to be somewhat of a nerve-wracking process. But once we committed and we started signing paperwork with the realtor, you know, it's like this is that point where it's now or never.
But I will say this, when we did sit down to talk about it, I remember very clearly when we pulled up Excel and we pulled up bank statements, there was immediate tension in the room. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't like this. This is why we don't do budget meetings. And it's not that we don't have the money. It's just when you start peeling the skin back and seeing the bare bones of your finances, automatically tension showed up in the room, and it just became like this tight, ugly conversation, and we hadn't even really gotten started yet. And I knew right then I don't want this to happen, because I knew that a lot of marriages ended in divorce because of finances. And I think it was because of this very thing. Nobody wants to address it because it turns ugly. And but we knew that if we were going to get on this path and be committed together, we had to have a visual. We had to see it. We had to be able to realize it. And I think I drew up this funny looking thermometer. And we kind of went for it. But we had a 2.5-year plan to pay off everything. And we were going to stick to that. We were going to tighten our belts and stick to that. But things just kind of went a different way to speed it up that we weren't expecting. We weren't planning to do it that way. It just happened that way. But we first and foremost had a plan. So even if things hadn't turned out the way they did with the home and whatnot, we would have been on that plan trucking along now. We were determined to stick to it. So I think it was a matter of also being faithful, just exercising that we could be faithful over what we do have, and the shortcut kind of appeared.
For sure, for sure. Now, you brought up a great point, because I think there's people listening in who had that meeting and the tension showed up and they ain't had a meeting since. That tension kind of just said, you know what? We're not doing this no more. It ain't worth it. But you all fought through the tension, and you all were able to win in the end. So help that person that's listening that kind of had that tension meeting and it kind of drove them apart. How did you all not, kind of just say, forget it and throw in the towel, but how did you all fight through that tension in order to, like you all said, come together?
Whatever grit is there is worth going through, because if you don't do it, if finances are an issue in your marriage that are pushing you apart, ignoring it is only going to make it worse. You're only going to make the hole deeper. So however uncomfortable that situation is, it's better than the alternative if you leave it unattended.
Right.
And you and your partner have to be committed to that. And when that tension arises in that meeting, like you said, you can't take it out on one another. When you start looking at where the money's going, you can't be pointing fingers at each other. Well, look at what you spent and look at what you spent, but I spent this and you said you were going to spend that. It really doesn't matter at that point. It's besides the point that you're trying to get to.
Right.
So a lot of couples, like you said, will avoid that talk simply because they don't want to go through that uncomfortable situation. But how uncomfortable are you going to be if you let that be the thing to really drive you apart?
Right.
Especially when you have to consider not just yourselves, but the rest of your family, your kids, all of that is impacted. And it's not about, being at war with one another or controlling the purse, so to speak, or controlling the checkbook, because it's a joint venture. But you both have to know where everything is going, and you both have to be on the same track.
Right.
And whatever discomfort you feel there is worth going through, but respect one another. Nobody's the bad guy. It's a joint venture to get it on the right track.
Right, because that discomfort is not there anymore. You see, it was worth having the conversation. And I think the thing that helps us is we're away from family, hours away from any family.
Yeah.
So we rely
her family
on
is 8 hours away, and my family is 10 hours away.
10 hours. So we rely on each other for everything. And we kind of have to be like, hey, we got to figure something out. What are we going to do? So going through that tough conversation or having through that tough conversation, we're used to it because we face obstacles a lot and we have to rely on each other. So we already know there's no escape. We're going to have to talk about it at some point because we don't have other distractions like, well, we'll do it later, we'll talk about it later, mom, them can help. No, it's just us. So we have to figure this out because our children, our family, our marriage, our friends, our church family, they depend on us to execute responsibility and to be able to demonstrate it. We owe it to our family, we owe it to each other, our faith, to be successful in this area.
And I think that the easiest way I can, make a summation of all of that is for our family, more often than not, there isn't a plan B. So we have to be good stewards about what we have, and realizing that we weren't being good stewards of what we have, again, a big motivating factor for us going the route that we did.
It's a dangerous place to be in. So if the conversation is tough now, imagine how much harder it's going to be if you never have it. Because at some point it's going to rear its ugly head and you're going to have to deal with it. And God forbid you have to deal with it during an emergency. So do it now to avoid being in that position where you don't have an out, you don't have any help, you don't have any finance, you can't self-finance an emergency situation. So especially if it's a young couple with young children, this is a gamble to not have enough. It's irresponsible and it's just dangerous because you never want to be in that situation. And that's what I think we were looking at. We could be in a bind right now because we were like most Americans, living paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't matter if we're making decent money. We're still living paycheck to paycheck. And we can't manage our family safely living paycheck to paycheck, especially with small children.
That's a fact. You all brought up some great points, but you guys, you fought through it. You let the tension be there, but you didn't run away. You came together, and like you said, you all had to figure it out. You all are there. It's just you two. It's all on y'all, and y'all figured it out. So talk to our audience about what you did figure out. You all said that you came up with a plan. It was going to take 2.5 years, but some things came up, and the plan switched. So lay the plan out for us because people are listening, trying to figure out what the heck they can do to make their way to debt freedom.
So I listen to Dave Ramsey a lot. I listen to you guys a lot. And there's one thing that stood out to me the most was, what do you have that you can sell? Can you sell something? Can you make something and sell it that way? You need to get another job. Dave is always talking about you not going out to eat. You next time you in a restaurant, you washing dishes. And we picked up side hustles, things like that. And I was in direct sales for a little while, and that was my saving grace, I'll be honest with you. So we just tinkered with things to try to figure out what can we sell, what can we make extra money with doing. And one night, we were sitting at home joking after the budget and after the plan, 2.5 years. We got a postcard in the mail, flyers, they're selling homes in our area and they're selling. And I said, we should sell the house. That's the one thing we know we have that could generate some money fast, possibly.
And I laughed pretty hard.
We did. We laughed about it, but it was kind of like a moment like, I wonder. So I went to a vendor event because I was selling stuff. I had a little table set up, and a lady walked up to me, and she asked me about my business, and I gave her the whole spiel, thinking she might want to join. And she looked at me, and she said, sweetie, all the extra money you're trying to make is in your house. I hadn't told her that we owned a home. I just told her we wanted to get out of debt, and I do whatever I need to do to make extra money. And when she told me that, my mind went to the previous conversation the night before. I'm like, we was just joking about that. How odd. And so before she left my table, she bought something. So I'm like, yeah, got me $30 in my pocket. And she gave me her business card. So I go home, and I told my husband, babe, the oddest thing happened. Guess what? I met a realtor. She told me this. It was kind of weird because we were just talking about this last night. So as a courtesy, I did contact her. I wanted to see what she could do, what she could offer us. Her first question to me was, how much do you need to walk away with to pay off your debt? And because we'd done a budget, we'd already counted the costs. We knew exactly down to the dollar amount how much we needed to pay off. And she said, okay, well, that's what I'm going to work with. But we already knew that the homes weren't selling for that much in our neighborhood, that it would have to take a miracle for us to get that much profit. We'd already pretty much came to the understanding that we'd walk away with some profit and maybe be able to pay off a chunk of our debt, but at least now we have a smaller number to work with. We listed the house. That was stressful. We've never done it before. Working full time, trying to stage the house, people coming in after work. And 10 days, we had an offer. And the home sold. And at the closing, it was just under our limit. And I was like, man, just under. We won't pay everything, but it come in just under that. And we'd already signed the paperwork, and we were glad. We had about $2,000 or $3,000 worth of debt that we would still have to pay. He got up, went to the restroom, came back in, and said they pulled him off to the side and told him that something happened with the paperwork. They actually owed us an additional $2,500. That took care of everything. At that moment, we knew. We were in there hugging the realtor and jumping up and down and thank God. But at that moment, we knew it was the right thing to do. And we honestly believe that because we had a plan, God wanted to bless our faithfulness, our plan. And that $2,500 kind of just showed up. It showed up like in 20 minutes. It just reappeared, and it took care of everything. So
we also got an additional $1,600 back from property taxes.
Right. So money started appearing, and we were able to make that call. I mean, the day before Thanksgiving, I was calling them left and right, like, hey, go ahead and pay this all. How I get my title? That's done. All right. Thank you. Don't call me again. It was the day before Thanksgiving. I walked in the house and told my husband I'd never been so happy to see such a small amount remaining in our checking account.
We went through it all, and we paid down everything.
That money came in, and it went right back out. But we were faithful, and we were determined that if this went through, that we would not sacrifice saying, oh, well, let's just pay off one thing and maybe we can do something else with the money. No, we decided to pay everything off, and we're no longer homeowners, and that's fine. But we were determined. We wanted to get out of debt so bad that the title of home ownership was something that we were willing to let go of to be debt free. Debt freedom sounded a lot better in our home than home ownership, and we were comfortable with saying we'll rent for a while. And
there's nothing wrong with renting if you're going towards a specific purpose. Right. And for us, that was getting out of debt, and the house was part of that debt. And as far as we're concerned, this just gives us an opportunity to save some money, take our time, and when we're ready to purchase a home again, we can actually get the one we want, not the one we got to settle for because we're tagged with debt.
Right. And get more house now.
I mean, that's a big sacrifice, and a lot of people, unfortunately, aren't willing to make that because they like the title of homeowner. And even though it's stressing them completely out and they're just worried about how they're going to keep up with everything, I think that it's been branded that way towards us, that, you know, that's the American dream, is to get the home with the white picket fence and 2 kids and a dog and 2 cars in the driveway. And so for a lot of people, it's hard to let that go. But I love how you said that debt freedom sounds way better than homeowner. And I think that it's important for everybody to just evaluate themselves and their situation, because the first word in personal finance is personal. So you have to really take a real hard look at your situation like you all did and said, you know what? We don't need this house like that. I'd rather be debt free and rent for a while, and we can get a house later, you know? And I just think it's so important that you all were able to have that conversation and that realization about yourselves. I think that's huge. Now, you talked about the fact that, you know, one set of families 8 hours away, another set of families 10 hours away. But when you all were doing all this, I'm sure that you all had conversations and you were talking things out. What was their response when you said, we're doing this and yeah, we're just going to sell our house and we're going to get out of debt and, you know, no big deal. So like, what was people's response?
Before we got started, I was talking to my wife, you know, about that particular part, and I came up with some confusion and some understanding.
Right.
You know, without being specific to what family members, but some would say, are you guys in trouble? Are you underwater?
Do you need help?
Yeah.
Why are you selling your home?
You know, you can ask for a loan if you need it, you know. Then there were some that were like, if you're going to do it, get what you intend to get out of it. Don't settle for anything less.
But it goes back to that understanding, that idea that home ownership, you're supposed to stay in this house for the next 30, 40, 50 years. Why are you leaving? But now it's like people are transient. They're moving all the time. So it wasn't a matter of much sacrifice for us. The biggest sacrifice I saw was having to do all the work to pack up and stuff, the time. But we were so hungry to be debt free. We knew it was going to be over and done with it. We were like, just throw it in the truck, took the tape around and let's go. But people didn't quite understand it because they didn't. If you've never been free from debt, it might sound unattainable. It might sound unrealistic, and they might ask why. You're going to always have debt. But for us, we don't believe that you have to have it. We believe that you can live a life free of debt and be your own financer.
Yeah, and I would say myself, I hadn't had a lot of experience with debt in my younger years. She'll be the one to admit that, she's a spender, I'm a saver.
The star card, military star card.
Yeah, star card is the devil.
That's what started it. First credit card.
I left the military. I had actually saved a lot of money before I got out. And, when we got married, I had to get used to sharing and blending the financial responsibility rather than being a tyrant about it. But, I would have to say just it was worth it to us in the end to get in that position where we just didn't have to worry about it hanging over our heads anymore.
And the family part, it goes back to what I was saying before. We've been on our own so long, away from everybody so much. We didn't have a lot of people offering their opinion and advice and their
input.
Not
a lot of people there to talk us out of it.
Right, because it's just us. This is pretty much all we got. It's pretty much our motto around here. So we told them what we were going to do just so they know, hey, when you come to visit, we won't be here.
I didn't really talk about it too much with the family, but between me and her, one of the reasons, I kind of went for the green light is because we'd looked at selling the home before and it was upside down. And, kind of a hobby between me and hers. We always go look at new developments, new construction, and we always see ourselves in whatever type of home it is we want to get in the future. And, keeping things like that in mind, one of the things we realized is when the realtor came to talk to us, because I told you I don't like finance and I put most of the renovation on the credit card, we'd actually had the highest property value in the neighborhood at the time. Right. And considering how underwater we were before, I thought it was advantageous to make the sale while the market was in our favor rather than against us. Because, you don't know how the market's going to go in the future. It could go up, could go down. But I thought if we're in a position where we can sell for more than we bought and reap enough profit to take care of everything all at once, I thought it was a good time to make a move because I don't know what's going to happen later.
What do you think this journey to debt freedom, what do you think about the type of impact that it had on your marriage?
Oh, man.
Just feel a lot more freedom. I feel like, personally on my end, I just feel like I have the freedom to do more of the things that I want to do for my family or for my wife because I don't have to be so worried about, I owe this guy money. And rather, I can invest in, saving for my kids, retirement, or I just want to get something pretty for my wife. I can do that.
I told a friend of mine this. We don't fuss a lot. We had typical couple disagreements. But I told her I don't remember the last time we had a disagreement. It seems like that tension from that first conversation actually was present all along. Whether we were going to talk about money or not, it was there. And once we made that last car payment, something left us. Something left. I can't explain it. I don't know if there's a true spiritual attachment with money and debt and stuff. But we have a level of peace in our marriage that we didn't realize we were missing from having car payments and credit card payments. And it's not just the payment, it's seeing what you owe to someone else. You're seeing what you will not be able to enjoy no matter how many hours you work that week. You won't be able to enjoy it because it belongs to the bank. And once that was out of the way, we dreamed bigger. We imagined things that we weren't imagining before. I feel like we have the balls back in our court now. Even discussing why not just wait and save up the money and buy our next house cash. Like we have these conversations now. Like, is it possible? Why do I need a credit score now? I mean, if we're thinking the bigger picture is to just have enough, have a surplus, have our storehouses full. So we have conversations now that are just totally different. These are like new conversations in our marriage. So it's actually, I would say, brought us closer because we have bigger dreams now. Because we did this. It was possible. We laid out the foundation and we came up with a game plan for it. And thankfully, it was spearheaded. It happened in less than 4 months. I would say about 3 months overall. But it's given us an opportunity that hasn't been present since we've been married, to not owe anybody anything but to love them. That's a level of peace that I wish that most couples, all couples, could experience, and they would see how important it is not to owe people, but love. They would see what it means to really say, hey, we just take care of one another. We don't have to worry about paying and owing people. And it's just a level of gratitude that I have for it, because the hard work for us was just having a conversation and getting started.
I think a lot of married couples, now that we're on the other side of it, I would have to, wager a lot of couples probably just don't realize how much of the stress and the pressure is financial. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of things tugging at you in the marriage and trying to keep your family together. Undoubtedly finance is a big part of that, but you just don't realize how big until it's actually off your shoulder.
Oh, man.
Until you don't have to live against the margins, check to check.
And I think with so much money coming out of the account every month for car payments, it doesn't matter if you have it coming out by every other week to make the payment seem smaller. Because it's all coming out, I think you become more a casual spender. Just spend. But since we don't have the debt coming out anymore, it's like, man, we got a lot of money in the account. Save it. Put it in the savings account. Hurry up and put it in the savings account. So that's all we think about now is, man, a whole lot of money in there before the check hit. Put it in the savings account.
And we're a lot more intentional about tracking where it goes and doing more cash transactions. Because when you got that plastic in your hand, you just set it on fire, swiping everywhere you go.
That's it. There's no emotion attached to it.
Sure. So what are the new goals now? You guys did the ultimate sacrifice, got rid of your house, paid off your debt. What is the goals now? You said you've been dreaming bigger, you've been thinking bigger. So tell us what's next.
Family first. Looking at our financial picture different has just changed our lens completely. We look at the amount of time that we spend with each other, our children. Is there a better design for our family? Should we have a dual income household? Can we do a better job of budgeting with one income? Different conversations now. Helping other people see the light, get out of debt, and achieve debt freedom. That's a passion that we have now, is talking to people and showing them about their money, teaching them how to save and not retire broke. So we have these conversations a lot. We look at getting professional licensing and certifications now to really help people, because once we achieved it and we got a taste of that honey, we're like, who else can I tell about this? They have to know about this. So we're basically just enjoying it right now. We look at things we weren't looking at before: purchasing land, purchasing business spaces to rent out to other businesses and whatnot. Definitely being more intentional about showing our children, teaching our children about money, reeling them in our family budget meeting. Even if they don't know what's going on, but training them now to expect this so much that when they leave our home, they're still doing it. So friends will start asking them, what are you doing? Like, I'm having a budget meeting, I'm going over my budget. And hopefully maybe one day we'll purchase a house. We're not in a rush, but we always explore homes to get an idea of location and price. And who knows, we might just be patient enough to pay cash for a home. To me, that's home ownership. I pay the taxes on it, and the house is mine. I own it. Yeah. I really own it.
Yeah, like I said, you don't need credit to buy a house when you got your own. You only need credit when you need the other guy's money.
Right.
And I'd say the more pragmatic view, I think what I'm really focused on is, now that we have those funds freed up, is to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for a healthy retirement.
Right.
We're setting ourselves up so our kids can go to college debt free. And I'll be honest with you, me and my wife both hold degrees, and if not for the GI Bill, I probably wouldn't have one. Because if you look at what's going on, these kids are graduating with a ton of student loan debt and not a job to match.
Right.
So, if not for that, I probably wouldn't have a degree. But both me and my wife have been blessed to take advantage of that. So we were both able to obtain higher education without going in any kind of debt. But, for our kids, we wanted to be there for them down the road, and they don't have to join the military if they don't want to, simply to obtain college funding. Right. And being a lot more intentional, like she said, when we think of home ownership, we don't really think about really doing a mortgage. We think more of buying outright. We don't just think of buying the house. I don't know what state you're in. We're down here in Florida. If you want to own land, that's kind of a tough deal down here. Yeah. But we have our sights set on, if we're financially independent and free, we can just go to where the land is and build on it.
Right.
So
the perk of renting.
Yeah. When you don't have a mortgage, you're not really tied down to one specific spot. So eventually we'll own a home again, but we are discovering that right now, having all this extra finance and being freed from the mortgage, we have a lot of mobility right now.
Right.
We can take advantage of opportunities that otherwise we couldn't, or at least not be able to, without having to go through the process of selling a home and moving in, taking a new opportunity all at the same time.
Right.
But to me, that's at the top of the list. If you manage to come out on the other side of this, be very intentional with what you're doing. Don't just, let all that money go on consumer spending, even if you're not putting it on credit.
Right.
Don't just buy for the sake of. Have your retirement set up, your college planning for your kids, your emergency fund for when things do go awry, and you don't have to basically clean yourself out to take care of it, and you don't have to go to AmScot or Payday Loans or any of those other places to be able to take care of it, and you definitely don't have to lean on your friends or your family and be in anybody else's pocket about it.
Right.
And we have a lot of freedom with regard to that now, and we're relishing in that.
Right. And actually planning a vacation.
There you go.
Right.
We haven't done that in a long time.
Right.
What do you think was the biggest life lesson that you took away from this whole process that you all went through?
I would say just the perspective of money, just realizing that whole tunnel vision that we have about how we handle finances. I think as a nation, the country as a whole has a very narrow view of how we handle finance, and we think it's right because it's normal, because we're used to it, because we see it all the time, and generation after generation of debt, credit card paid off, and you're never really ahead. Very few people actually live out that financially free status and realize that, it's not about all of that. It's not about weighing yourself down for things you really don't need.
Right.
And having that perspective, it gives us a way to channel how we want to teach our kids about money, so they don't ever have to be in a lot of the ditches that we were with money, as far as how do you balance it with the house.
I think the biggest life lesson I had was eye-opening about like you said, we were blessed to we have degrees, but we never learned about money. We never were taught about money, and it's not to say that somebody failed us, but we just don't know. And it was eye-opening to realize that most people there's no financial literacy. How else do you learn about money? You have to get in a bind and dig your way out before you realize how money works and how it works in your life, the control it has in your life, and operating out of fear. And is why we hold on to situations that don't produce more for us. And wanting my children to be spared from that lesson the hard way. I want them to see us live it out by example. And when they come of age, they're not expecting to just get credit cards and buy stuff that pay for things tomorrow that you bought yesterday. So you got it yesterday and you're still paying for it day after day after day. I don't want them to have to experience that, because it creates a habit that we're in our mid-30s and we're just now realizing how much trouble that first Star card introduced into my life. Introduced into in my life, and it impacted him, who wasn't even with me when I got this thing. It just created a habit of, oh man, I can pay for it later. I can just get it now. And I mean, he and I met. I had 2 cars, a motorcycle, 2 personal loans. I financed furniture just because I could, and because I was military, they were giving it to me. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and
I was quite different. I had what they call overseas a beater. So, my trunk didn't stay closed. I had a strap to close it. My driver's side door didn't open. I had to go around the passenger side to open it. And I just kind of didn't care. Because when I looked at my bank account, the money was right.
So he was a saver, I was a spender, but we got married, and I had to figure out how to present all of this to him, let him know I'm going to get better at it. But like I said, 8 years, it finally got to the point that we were like, okay, our kids are getting older. We got to start thinking about the education. We got to start thinking about our retirement. It can't go on.
And I had to be honest with myself in the beginning, because managing finance when it's just me is one thing, but managing finance with your wife and when kids come in the picture, it's another thing. It's not quite the same. Mm-hmm. It would be normal for me to go out, do whatever, and by the end of the day, I know exactly how much money I spent. I know exactly what is in there, and I didn't have to check it. I can count it in my head because I'm meticulous like that. But when you have a family and you're all in one account, and at least our family, we don't believe in separate accounts. We believe we're all in one mission together. It's just one account, and whatever you got, I got. So when I get to the end of the day, and I think I know how much is in there, and I check how much is in there. Well, the kids needed this, groceries. I'm sure you want to eat, and this, that, and the other. And it's a lot different, balancing it together. And it took me a while to get out of that, know that I'm the only person accessing this.
Right.
What would be some book recommendations for somebody listening, trying to figure out, like you said, there's no financial literacy out there. You kind of have to figure things out. What are some books that they can use to help them figure it out?
Definitely Ty recommended book, 31 Days to Radically Reduce Your Expenses. That was one of the first books I bought after I found y'all's channel. And it taught me to shop at home first, which led me to finding other ways to reduce grocery expenses. Another book I would highly recommend is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because the first chapter, your toes get stepped on in that book. You believe he's talking about you and all your cousins and friends and family, because it is very, very personal. Right up front. So that's definitely something, because again, it talks about the importance of nobody actually teaching you finances. And definitely, if you are a believer, I'd highly recommend reading it. Reading scriptures. Is certain scriptures in the book of Proverbs that talk about wealth and how it's basically wisdom, attaining wisdom to manage your finances. And we see scriptures all throughout the Bible that talk about saving, that talk about spending, that talk about giving, that talk about planning and having a budget, a financial plan. So I would highly recommend, if there's someone who's looking for spiritual guidance around their finances or embarking on this journey as a couple, particularly if they are way in over their head with debt, you're going to need some help. You're going to need some spiritual help to get through this thing, because it's going to be a tough road to travel together. So those would be my top 3 books right now. And to always share wins with people. Share a win with a couple, share a win with a family, something you learned, because that's one of the biggest things that I've learned myself, joining like the Facebook group you have, just seeing people win and learn and stumbling and getting back up. So the reading material is great, finding a support group is great, and sharing this with other people who may or may not be in the same boat, but they are listening. People are always listening, and you'll be surprised. They might come back and ask you, where'd you hear this? Where'd you learn this? Who told you about this?
And then we can say smart money.
Right.
Right. So join Aaron, Tiffany, myself, and Ty at smartmoneycouples.com. Join the Facebook group. Even if you're single, it's free. Just go to smartmoneycouples.com and check it out. Now, what if there's somebody listening to the show right now who loved your story, inspired by your story, but then they look at their own personal situation, their own numbers, their amount of debt, their income, their responsibilities, and they are not sure if they have what it takes to become debt free? What words of encouragement would you tell that person?
I would say, if you tell yourself you won't, then you won't. To go through something like this, it takes a lot of determination and a commitment to a particular course of action. And you may have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to be honest with yourself and that you're going to have to do things different. And that's the big part. You have to change fundamentally what you're doing to get there. So I would say surround yourself with like-minded people. Make sure you have a course of action and that you're committed to it. And don't be derailed by people that are talking down on what you're doing. If you're taking advice about getting out of debt from people who are digging themselves deeper in debt, you might want to check that. So that goes into, surrounding yourself with like-minded people and people who are going to encourage you to do the right thing, and have somebody, anybody, even if, me and my wife, we hold each other accountable. But even if you're single, have someone that can be your anchor, and hold you accountable to what it is that you're trying to do. Because if you don't stay on the path, you'll never get there. So be intentional, be committed, be determined, and refuse to be deterred.
And the only thing I would say is know the difference between your needs, wants, and desires. Our desire was to be debt free. We needed a place to stay. We wanted a house, a home, but we were willing to get rid of our home ownership title and rent for a little while to attain our desire of being debt free. We wanted that, we needed it, and it was a desire of ours. So identify those and have a why, know why you're doing it. If you're doing it because you want to save up money to get a bigger car, another car, things like those things, they'll pass away. But life lessons like this, peace of mind, like things like that, you can't put a price tag on it. It's priceless. So know the real main reason why you need to do it. And also to do some research. Look at the statistics on debt in America, the average family, how much consumer debt they have, and add yourself to that number because you're included in it if you're in debt. And think about the impact that it has on marriages and on family and on people's lives long term. And do a comparison. Am I starting to head down that road? Even we talk about the lack of knowledge around handling money, how people get a lot of money and then their lives are cut short, or they end up homeless or end up broke or something. So it's not a matter of just having more money. More money won't solve the problem if you're not diligent with the money you do have. So learn to get out of debt and learn the main reason why you don't want to be consumed by and have so much of it. Not even the idea, well, I just have a little bit, or it's good debt, bad debt. If you didn't buy it outright, you need to figure out a way to get out of owing somebody else money.
Incredible advice. And your story is incredible. And we're so excited and so glad that you all agreed to come on and share your story with our audience today. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you
for having us.